I conducted a bit of a self-survey, and as a result, I'm going to share which knives I actually use to cut the most things in any given week. Now, what I was hoping for would be some really cool lists where I was like,
Number 5.
yeah, so the TRC Apocalypse, when I need to get out and do some really hard use outdoor stuff, I take the Apocalypse out, really never lets me down.
Number 4.
But then just for my round the yard belt knife, I carry this custom AD Knives S45 VN, beautiful fixed blade.
Number 3.
Then when I go out to the range, it's the hardcore hardware, just in case I need to pry out those staples, cut my targets, all that good stuff. Love this knife.
Number 2.
But then when it's time to be a gentleman, I go to my parties with my cigars and my fancy folk, and I use my Advanced Knife Bro Stump Lifter. Traditional man's knife. Delightful.
Number 1.
Then lastly, of course, is the M390 Sleesh Bowie from Spyderco. Love this knife. Rare, expensive. So I use it all the time. So there are the knives we like to say we would carry a lot, but the thing is, when you're a knife person, you've got so many knives that you actually drown out your EDC knife, and you don't end up using one of them specifically much more than the other 20 in your drawer. So when I went through a week and actually considered all the things I actually used to cut stuff with, my results were a bit less cool. But we'll start off strong. The Almar Eagle is in my pocket pretty much all the time. Sometimes it's just in my back pocket, and I've got the knife that I'm testing or reviewing in my normal pocket that I'm sort of trying to remember to use. But I'll get this guy out all the time. Sometimes you need a really fine tip point to get under a cable tie or something like that. And I did actually cut several things with that this week. So that's definitely number 5 for the week. So, start strong. Maybe we'll continue that way, yeah? Next for the week was the Spyderco Stretch. I tell myself this is my most used, most carried knife, and it may be my most carried knife, but again, because I'm always bloody reviewing something, often it's been pushed out of my pocket lately. When I'm not really thinking about the channel, this is indeed the one that I grab, and indeed it's done probably the most amount of work out of all of my knives over its lifetime, but barely ranks higher than the Almar Eagle, which is, it's getting a little bit of use, but I got to check myself because it's definitely not the number 1. Next up was undeniably the blade on my Leatherman curl. So this is the Leatherman that I carry most of the time. And you have that thing where you're going to cut something that's a bit more gross or a bit more like high risk. You always use your multi-tool knife before you use like your knife, unless you've got a real beater knife in your pocket. This guy is my beater knife. So the Leatherman curl blade, it's a 420 HC Leatherman blade that, of course, it's shaped and ground well enough to do most cuts. I keep this one pretty sharp, and I sharpen it on the Ken Onion belt system there, so it's never going to have a amazing 17-degree mirror polish edge or anything, but it's kept serviceably sharp, and it does a lot of work because I'm often using the pliers, I'm often using a multi-tool. This multi-tool here, don't know why, more than the Arc, more than the Wave, this is the one that ended up sitting in my pocket most of the time. This has risen to the top of my multi-tools, and it's got the old plier head, it's got minimal tools, the tools don't even lock. I don't know, there's no logic to it really. It's just a sleek enough package that I really do forget that it's in my pocket, which means that I'll carry it. And often, sometimes wear the same pants a few days in a row, it means that I forget to take it out of my pocket as well. And so it's just there in my back pants pocket whenever I reach for it, which is pretty handy around these parts because I do use a multi-tool fairly often. So the elephant in the room when you're talking about cutting, it's not as cool, but you can't deny that the thing you're going to cut most with is probably a food knife. Yeah. So out of all the kitchen knives I use the most, the one I reach for the most, it's the Creeley MagnaCut kitchen knife. So this is the petty knife, the omnivore, he calls it. And this is the peak of the video. This thing's amazing. It's a sort of chisel ground, so it's got the grind on one side like a true sort of traditional kitchen knife. It's in MagnaCut. It is exceedingly thin behind the edge, and it cuts like crazy. Even when I've left the edge go a little bit, the geometries here are it's so thin. It's so thin. It's just amazing. And yeah, the reason this isn't number 1 though is of course because I've got other kitchen knives. Maybe it's my Shun, maybe it's my K2, maybe it's when this is in the sink covered in in raw chicken, maybe it's the Mora petty knife that I get out instead. So it just doesn't quite rise to the absolute top of my pocket knife or my knife use in general. So let's rip the band-aid off and get to number 1. It only occurred to me yesterday, that's why I'm making this video, as I was using it mindlessly for the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th time in this, Wednesday of this week that we're up to now. Yeah. The knife that you keep in your car, is often the knife that you use the most. If you have, like me, a post office box, you go to the post, you get into your car, you might have a letter that you're wondering what it is, you might have, usually I've got a package of some kind. I could drive 15 minutes until I get home or do all my jobs and then get home, or I could open them in the car right there and then. So the 3CR13 unsharpened, barely functional blade of the Gerber dime. Yeah, it's covered in tape, it's covered in bits of cardboard. It is sharp only by virtue of being narrower on one side of its face. But this guy has cut open so much stuff. There's no point even sharpening it because you would cut a single sheet of cardboard one time and it'll be back to like just geometry only sharpness, so no edge apex. But this, for some reason, I think it's just because it sits like a little dark little spot in the bottom of my cup holder in my car. You can basically put a coffee cup over the top of it and just, it doesn't cause any problems. It's so small. It's got a couple of other little things on it as well. It's got a bottle opener on it sometimes, which is handy to have if you're at like a party or something and there's no bottle opener. You can quickly run out to the car and get what is a pretty robust bottle opener. Probably the most competent tool on this multi-tool. The pliers, they're clicky and jiggly, and they don't really come together at a precise tip. The package opener is fairly nice, but it is such a nail buster to get out that I can't get it out right now. It's probably been so long since. Oh wait, there it is. There it is. The package opener is. This is what I should be using to open my packages, but because it sucks to get out, I don't. It's got a little pair of scissors that are so small that you would never use them. Like they're just like tiny, tiny scissors that you never use this over the knife really. This tool is just it's those mini micro. It's those. It's those mini multi-tools that I think they've realized that people don't use that often, or they mustn't because no one really makes them anymore. Apart from Gerber, still makes little dime, and I think they still make the other one as well. That one, the uglier dime. I don't hate the dime. I obviously like it enough that I put it in my car, but it is very, very funny when you actually consider the real world use of all this stuff we're constantly banging on about. And that, frankly, for most of my cuts, this little blade pretty resolutely soldiers on and meets about 90% of my cutting needs. Terrible, terrible. Anyway, fun little silly video I thought I would make for you. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.